This is the Neurosurgery Podcast.
Rolling.
Happy holidays. Welcome back to the Neurosurgery Podcast. JP and I are super excited to be virtually here with Brian Gantwerker, a friend. Brian, say hello to the podcast listeners.
Hey, everybody. Happy holidays.
Yeah, so he's pulled over on the side of some freeway in California, right? Hideous traffic, probably.
No, I'm actually in Brentwood. I just got done with a bike ride, so you're seeing me in all my shiny glory here. So I'm
No, be honest.
safely pulled
You're
over.
you're Michael Douglas. We're about to see Falling Down happen live on the podcast, right?
I forgot my pocket protector at home, so not today, guys. Not today.
Great movie. Great movie.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Brian, if you don't know him, Brian is at the Cranial Spinal Center of Los Angeles. Brian is in private practice, but Brian has been a representative for neuro and spine surgeons writ large. He's worked extensively with the AANS, also with NAS, multiple PACs, representing the advocacy arm, if you will, of surgeons around America. So, thank you, Brian, for that great yeoman's work.
Thank you. Happy to do it, and proud to be an alternate for the AANS at the American Medical Association, speaking truth to power and trying to keep healthcare from going off the rails.
Yeah, so Brian, we wanted to touch on a dicey topic, and JP and I wanted to get into this a little bit, but there's been some more and more discussion about how surgeons and doctors are losing power. We see insurance companies, hospital systems, med device and pharma, nursing, right? They all seem to be accruing more and more power, yet we as doctors accrue less and less, yet we're responsible for everything being done on our ability to prescribe and treat, right? So
Right.
tell us a little bit about how we got here and where we started, because our listeners, some of them are in training, some of them are senior, some are mid-career.
So, there used to be first of all, there wasn't insurance companies, say about 60 or 70 years ago. It was direct payment for services rendered. If you watch one of my favorite shows is I Love Lucy, and there's an episode where little Ricky gets tonsillitis, he needs surgery, and they pay for little Ricky's surgery. They pay the doctor. Everyone is happy, and no one is thrown out of their home. And they live in a modest two-bedroom
Right.
apartment in New York. So, and he's a nightclub performer. He's not a millionaire. So then, insurance companies started to insert themselves in the 60s and 70s, and the HMOs in the early 80s, all in an idea of sort of controlling, cost. And so doctors were asked to be more responsible with the limited resources available for them. Medicare was enacted in the 1960s, Social Security in the 1940s. And these were sort of designed more for safety net, but as more and more people sort of started contributing to it, it sort of got beyond that. It sort of grew beyond what that was going to happen. And so immediately we started talking about the limited amount of dollars to pay people. Classically, physicians have not been able to align their interests with one another. Frequently, we fight, we argue, we say you don't do enough, you do too little. Even amongst ourselves in our own specialty, we sort of start jabbing at each other. The tumor guys will call the spine guys knuckle draggers, and the spine guys will call the epilepsy guys weirdos. And so it sort of gets, and you guys know exactly what I'm talking about too, but I love all y'all. But the key is, it's divide and conquer. It's Conquest 101. So just at the AMA, we had some head-to-heads with our friends in the cardiology and family medicine and the medical medicine section, and it's mostly around things like the cuts, right? So go back a little bit now. We have not had a COLA, which is a cost of living adjustment for Medicare payments, since its inception. There's never been inflation adjustment for physicians since the last 25 years. So physicians were asked to be stewards of healthcare, to use science to make decisions, and then be good stewards of resources. Obviously, we're not going to get too into the ACA, but it was, I think, a well-intentioned law that turned into a really what we're dealing with right now, which is really not what it's designed for. And physicians sort of kept ceding ground. There are physicians, though, who manage to get themselves together. They join a union such as that run by the SEIU. They've made independent physician associations, or IPAs. But really, at the end of it, is doctors are too busy to fighting with each other and trying to stay afloat to try to align interests. And invariably, something comes up either at the AMA meeting where we're at each other's throats and sort of fighting and realizing that we're all trying to fight from the same pot. When realizing the largest amount of the pot, the largest amount of the pie is going to administrators, insurance companies, and hospitals, and we're just kind of fighting over these little scraps. We're like the precursors to the mammals, walking amongst the gigantic dinosaurs, fighting each other, the kaiju's, if you will, battling one another. We're sort of these little people in Tokyo trying not to get stomped on. So we're sort of really small. We're disparate. We don't keep our eye on the ball, and we just kept ceding ground and wondering why we're not winning.
So, Brian, let me just insert a comment here. I think I can speak for the three of us and most of our specialty. Even though we're going to spend today talking about things that relate to occupation, career, and financial control of a situation like healthcare, we are not in any way espousing the concept, because we don't get a lot of sympathy. People don't go, "Oh, those poor doctors are not
Right.
making enough money." This is not about doctors saying, "Oh, we don't make enough money. You need to pay us more." This is not really that concept. This is something quite different for people who don't listen to our podcast regularly. I just want to make that very clear that this is not like a bunch of complaining doctors grousing about not living a good enough life. I think,
I,
right? So,
I agree with you. We're very lucky. We would like some stability to payment just so there can be independent practice because it does cost a lot of money. So, just to give you an idea from malpractice insurance and JP's and state where I'm from originally, Illinois, it's about $125,000, $250,000 to insure a neurosurgeon. So there are real costs associated. I think all of us are happy and thankfully comfortable. I think all of us want to be good stewards of healthcare, but we also want to offer people access. In order to have access, you have to be able to pay your rent and pay your staff, and also we want to be good partners. So it's hard to be good partners and use our scientific knowledge if we're being told what to do by entities that don't know what they're doing. And that's really what it comes. That's more, I think, the top of the crown, really, of what collective bargaining might be and probably should be used for.
Yeah, I often I literally scratch my head and I wonder why it is that doctors seem to be, as you pointed out, Dr. Gantwerker, and I think we've all observed, we are not good at cooperating with each other. And it makes no sense because as I've said many times, I come from a family of lawyers. And if you look at lawyers as a professional group, boy, they are put together. And if you think about the stereotypes of the nasty, selfish, blood sucking lawyer and the wonderful, heartful, selfless doctor, it seems that things are actually completely the reverse, where the group of doctors as a community can't agree on anything, can't function as a group, even though we have the purpose that we all espouse. Whereas the lawyers, who stereotypically should all be out for themselves and making their own nut, they can get together as a group. And if you look
Yeah,
at different professional regulations, I talk a lot about Section 6001 of the ACA, where doctors can't own hospitals. But on the flip side, for lawyers, a non lawyer cannot own a law firm. So they seem to have completely outmaneuvered us in terms
yeah,
of getting together for that kind of professional regulation. But it seems like we are reaching a point where, again, to Dr. Wang's point, not for the money, although, again, because we have this highbrow ethical goal and our vocation, we always have to clear our throats and go, oh, well, it's not just that we want more money, although we should be fairly compensated. To your point, Dr. Gantwerker, it's not about the money, it's about the control. It's about the ability to control the care of our patients, making
right,
decisions from hiring and firing to ordering tests, how much you need to do for people, when you
correct.
can do it, where you can do it in a timely fashion. So maybe talk a little bit about collective bargaining as it's been applied in the medical community,
Yeah.
and have any of these things been addressed successfully, even in a small microcosm where doctors have organized?
Well, there's a couple really good examples. And first off, you made a really good point. Well, and I think I want to answer it, at least as I've seen it being in medicine since 2001 when I finished medical school. And I know Mike's been in a lot longer than I have. But part of it is, and this is especially true in neurosurgery, is we're taught to be very independent, critical thinkers. So we don't believe each other when we tell each other things. We want to go verify ourselves. We go back and double check. And what level is that? Or am I sure that's L5S1? Am I sure this is the left side? These are the kind of things that we're always double checking, trust but verify constantly. And so we sort of become very suspicious of each other's intentions. And then we sort of, don't really like sometimes somebody says something and we sort of get a little bit of ego driven. So it's a number of things. Part of it is driven by the healthcare system. It's designed to not let doctors cooperate. We're still fighting over the same, scraps and the pie. And before we knew it, we were totally out of the driver's seat and in the trunk. It's funny. There's this thing in the Avengers here. Bruce Banner was talking about, or I think it was Ragnarok, and he was talking about how sometimes he's got the Hulk. The Hulk's got one side of the steering wheel, and he's got the other side. But he was actually in the trunk for 2 years. I mean, that's what it feels like where somebody else is driving the body, right? So that's kind of what that's what it feels like. But I will give you a great example of doctors cooperating, and that was Micra in 1975 in California, here in California, when doctors essentially staged a non-patient threatening walkout where they shut down their elective clinic, kept seeing patients in the ER and in the consults in the hospital, but they shut down their elective clinics until they had malpractice reform. And tort reform, until very recently, was sort of one of my favorite parts about California. It's been expanded, not totally blown up, but it has been changed mostly from threats from a group of lawyers who wanted to essentially sue us into oblivion. And there's this guy who's sounds like a Bond villain going around the country blowing up states that have tort reform. More on that later. But that was a really important moment when neurosurgeons and orthopedic guys and cardiologists and everybody got together and said, "What the heck's going on? We're not going to be able to afford to stay in California anymore." And unfortunately, states like New Mexico, they have not figured that out yet. And New Mexico's very rapidly becoming a doctor desert because doctors can't afford the malpractice premiums. And as you know, in Chicago specifically, you can't find a private practice neurosurgeon anymore. I mean, they're there, but they're extremely, extremely rare. Because they just can't afford to stay in business. So if doctors cooperate, good things can happen. You can negotiate tort reform. You can negotiate a reason, like things from insurance companies to come to the table and negotiate honestly. So think of it like a bipartisan act of Congress, right? If you get no surprise, if you get doctors to cooperate, amazing things can happen, and that's really what that comes down to. Is you can sort of right the ship. You can figure out what makes sense for our patients. How can we get fair compensation? How can we prevent from getting money clawed back from us, for instance, from insurance companies unfairly? And how do we adapt to new threats like the Wiser Act? So we need to figure out how can we work together. This was a big topic at the AMA, and people were really yelling at each other, and actually got kind of mildly yelled at by a delegate from the psychiatry section, because we came out sort of trying to look at the Wiser Act along with orthopedics as something that we could help actually turn into something good, like connecting authorization of payment, which is like the brass ring that we're trying to get to, right? If you authorize a surgery, you can't deny payment. That's it. Limiting clawbacks, all things you can do if you sort of go along with it to an extent with an AI algorithm. Just so your listeners know, Wiser is essentially having people with straight Medicare needing authorization for certain CPT codes, like laminectomy codes, like the 63047. That's like bread and butter for all of us for the spine section. So we, instead of just saying we're not going to do it. And yeah, we all know that terrible things can happen with AI, and especially if they don't make the code public, they can sort of manipulate it. But think about it from a positive perspective. Well, I had somebody from the psychiatry came up to me and was really mad at me that we were speaking that we shouldn't oppose the Wiser Act and try to work with them. And I had to have a very calm conversation with them, and thankfully we sort of came tete a tete. And she was still mad at me the next day, but it's okay. I mean, just because I just listened to her perspective. I think if we can get better at that cross specialty, it's like, why are you angry? Like, let's just talk about it. What ticks you off that I said? Let's talk about this. How can we get past this? A lot of it comes to people, and she just said, "I'm just really frustrated," is what she told me. I'm really frustrated. That it wasn't what I said. It was the fact that she was frustrated with the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't that she was angry at neurosurgery. She was angry at the whole situation.
Well, and I'm sure she was channeling the historic frustration ever since we stopped doing lobotomies. We've just been in a natural state of conflict between our specialties.
Well,
But it
in fairness to her, I totally, but truthfully, in fairness to her, I understood why she was ticked off. I mean, I
yeah.
when she explained it eloquently, I said, I get it, but this is why we feel, and why I feel this way, and why I said what I said in my testimony.
And let's take a moment to pause and appreciate the irony that in a conversation about should physicians organize, bargain collectively, is there a role for this at a national level, we're talking about the American Medical Association, which
Right.
is supposed to be the organization representing all physicians at a national level to advocate for our interests. And yet, we all know there are a few things the AMA actually does and successfully advocate for physicians' interests in an organized and aligned way is not on that short list.
Well,
But
I'll push back a little bit on that. I will, because I've been in the House of Delegates twice now, and I hope you get to come someday. I really do. And this is not a plug for the AMA by any means, but I will tell you that some of your colleagues, people you respect a lot as free thinkers and free market people, talk about the way to affect change is unfortunately working within the system. And you can do those, you can level those criticisms of the AMA. I mean, that is a very fair criticism. And a lot of, honestly, some of the trustees would probably say, yeah, we're right. You're right. We're kind of messed up right now. They're trying to thread a line from the current administration to the frustrations of physicians. For instance, we had Dr. Oz address us, and unfortunately, there was a lot of negativity that came with that from the comments on the Instagram page, the AMA, and to the AMA's credit, they're trying. But yeah, there's definitely some drift going on, some major drift. But here's the thing with the AMA, and we should get back on topic. But I think the thing
yeah,
we got to remember about the AMA is that the AMA, even though we may not feel it may represent all of us, or even a lot of us, or even most of us, it is the body that Congress looks to when they ask us questions. When they say, "What do the doctors think?" They're not coming to the AANS or the CNS. They're not coming to spine. They're not coming to NAS. They're not coming to AAOS. They're going to the AMA because they're the low-hanging fruit. And those are the
yeah,
guys. Those are the guys in the yellow caution or the orange caution vests directing traffic in their minds. So
right.
you level very fair criticisms, JP, and I can't disagree with you on some of them.
Well,
But yeah,
well,
but
I was just going to say because of our many shared friends and interests, I think it's
yeah,
inevitable that I'll wind up there at a meeting one day, and
yeah.
we'll see how much of a bull I can be in their china
Well,
shop. But
you should,
but
and you should. And I've done the same thing, and no one's thrown tomatoes at me. I was
yeah,
talking about my home state's delegation. I knew they were ticked off at me, but some of the people came up to me and were texting me, thank you for speaking up, thank you for saying that, and other than that
but,
one sort of unusual interaction I had, which ended up being fine, it was actually it was okay. People are
yeah.
very
So
courteous. Yeah.
so the question I would like to put to you, and it relevant to your point that say what you will about them, that's where Congress looks. And as you mentioned, so many trends in the past 5, 10, 15, 50 years have seen this dwindling autonomy of physicians,
Yes.
dwindling influence even within the institutions after the institutions captured us as employees. And so it's not as if we can wave a magic wand and fix everything at once and go back to how it was because I say we, the royal we. I wasn't there. It's your fault, boomers.
No,
But we as a profession gave ground. We ceded ground over the years. Maybe because we were focused on patient care, or maybe because we trusted the people in the C-suite to take care of us, or
all
maybe
the above.
because some of us were just bad business people, or whatever reasons it
All the
happened.
above.
All of
All
the
the above.
above. And
All the above.
so let's say that we do get some national level consensus where we organize as neurosurgeons or as all physicians or what have you. What would you say are a few bite-sized first step target moves that an effective and aligned coalition of physicians could seek to achieve feasibly in the near term?
Well, I would say, first of all, we can't mandate membership. That's low. That's low hanging fruit. If somebody doesn't want to be part of the collective bargaining entity, they should be allowed to opt out because there are other things besides unions. So there's guilds, there's IPAs, there's co-ops. So there's all sorts of ways that we can bring everyone into the fold who wants to, like employed physicians, academic physicians, locum tenens, people who don't see patients anymore. I'm sorry, who don't do like occupational medicine type neurosurgery. So there, first of all, we have to give people a way out. We don't have to. We should not mandate people to come in. But part of the advantages is things like labor contract negotiation. So, for instance, we're not talking about striking, but if you're talking about somebody who can no longer see patients in a reasonable manner, is asking to see too many patients, like say they're asking to be seeing 30, 40, 50 patients a day, and stuff's happening to patients and they're just being pushed, there should be someone who can intervene and say we need to look at this from a patient safety perspective, because otherwise you're being told you're a lazy doctor. That's low hanging fruit number one. Number two is fair compensation for call. And I've talked to Sandra Connolly about this. Fair compensation for call. He and I are, and again, we're not advertising for this, but this is something he and I spoke of. Is that fair compensation for call? Should you get $100 a night for call? No, that's just not what the market is. So you should get a fair market value for your services. It's like, should you get paid $100,000 to do a lumbar laminectomy? Well, I don't think maybe there's somebody does get that for these PI cases, but no, but we shouldn't make less than somebody makes to fix your bumper, right? I mean, that's usually where the policy wonk argument that doctors make too much money falls apart. It's like, okay, well, how much do you think we should get for this? And I wouldn't ask for 50, 60, 70, $80,000 for a single level lumbar lammy. But should we get something north of $100 for $900 where it is right now? Yeah, probably. Training, skill, the aftercare of the patient, the ability to decide when a patient needs surgery. So obviously that goes more to fair compensation, both from call and insurance companies. But we don't want to threaten work stoppages. That's extreme. We don't want to put patients at risk. But I think those are three really low hanging fruits. And of course, coming to the table with insurance companies, state by state, and hopefully as things settle down with the ACA and the dust settles, that we'll have more insurance companies offering products rather than fewer, because right now we have these super giants that own doctors and banks and make payday loans and stuff. This cannot stand. So hopefully people will wake up and we'll get the insurance companies broken up into little bits and pieces and compete with each other, and we won't go single payer, which is what my real fear is. If we don't fix this, is that people are going to say, well, to heck with all this, we're just going to do single payer. It's the easiest thing to do. That's like going to be the default position, just because it's easy to say Medicare for all. I mean, it just rolls off the tongue, right? So we don't, but also the thing to think about is, God forbid it does, which it might, if we don't have some sort of collective bargaining entity, and this is the lowest hanging fruit, if we have zero say, if we have no skin, if we have no hand, as they used to say on Seinfeld, we have no hand, then you are going to be under the boot of whoever is running that thing, whether it's an insurance company, the federal government, the state government, whoever's running the single payer system. And I hope it never, never, never happens. But if we have zero ability to collectively bargain and discuss things, we're in deep trouble.
So, Brian, let me just catch our audience back up, because not everybody understands the subtlety of the language. Some people are outside the U.S. Trainees may not be sensitive to the gravity of what you're discussing. So, when we're talking about this topic, we're sort of skirting around the topic of having physicians unionize in a way, although that's been banned previously, which was what JP was talking about. We are technically one of the only groups that is not allowed to mobilize as a group and collect and talk and all that. Right. And there's a couple trends. Yeah. Collusion. There are a couple trends driving this, and I'll just highlight them. And because I, as a person, am not a big fan of unions, and that most surgeons would say, no, I'm not in for that, right? But three things. Number one, 80% of new grads are now employed, so they have no leverage against their employer, usually a hospital or university. Number two, you discussed the writ large element of government control, and for all those people not paying attention to what Brian was saying about the Wiser Act, okay? So for 6 very large states, starting in 13 days, yes, you will have to get prior authorization for one of 15 procedures. Now, remember, neurosurgeons are a very small group, but let me just read some of the 15 procedures that are going to require prior auth in these 6 states. Florida's not one of them. Electrical nerve stimulators, phrenic nerve stimulation, deep brain stimulation, vagus nerve stimulation, epidural injections, vertebroplasty, kyphoplasty, cervical fusion, hypoglossal stimulation, and percutaneous decompression for spinal stenosis. Now, that to me sounds like about 30% of the 15 procedures that kind of fall in our rubric, not that we control them all.
And it's funny how that works, huh? Like all of it's like 90% of it's neurosurgery.
we're 1% of doctors, so we're the problem now, right? Okay.
We're the
And
problem.
by the way, this kicks in January 1 for people not paying attention to the Wiser Act, and in 2032 or 31, it goes to the whole country, right? And then the third part is that brought me to it is we're seeing what happened like at Stanford, which is the residents. And I was part of SEIU at USC when I was a resident, but it didn't really mean anything. But you saw the Stanford residents mobilize as a group and actually collectively bargain in a very proactive way, not to just shirk duties. They got tangible results at Stanford, and then UCSF, I think, was the second one, right? So I'm kind of becoming converted to this sort of like union thinking. So pitch to us what this might really look like, what it might mean for us. I'm sorry, your car okay there? You good? Oh, we lost you there.
The thing is, it's interesting because you're not the only one to sort of talk about the conversion to sort of a different way of thinking. It's important to know. And sorry, my audio kind of went a little crazy. So if I'm shouting, I apologize. Um,
No problem.
the thing that's important, and I think it's important. I always tell patients, you can't tell other doctors, you have to have sort of like a Talmudic understanding, like the Talmud. Like you should ask a lot of questions before you say no. It's like before you say no, let's ask questions. What does this look like? Can we even do it? How do we get out of it if we do it? What can go wrong? I always think like, maybe it's just me. I always think about when I do anything surgically, I was thinking like, what's the next step that could actually make something go wrong? What could I do that would really screw things up? And how do I fix it? Yeah, hopefully I don't do anything wrong, but you have to know how to get out of your own self-made problems. So I feel like when it comes to collective bargaining, we it's not that we don't have a choice but to do it. We could always not do it and see what happens, but we've kind of been doing that for the last 35, 40 years. So my whole thing is, why don't we see what happens when we discuss it writ large, rather than just sort of hoping for the best, because you're just kind of waiting for Godot, because you're waiting for the better angels of the people involved in healthcare, you're hoping will appeal to their better angels. And this is where I get very frustrated with a lot of folks. Like we've seen time and time again, cycle after cycle, we're proposing reasonable ways to get to unscrew healthcare, and unfortunately, no one's really listening. And a perfect example is what's going on right now with the ACA vote, where we got some really good ideas from people I don't always agree with, and some who I fight with vociferously on Twitter. But some of them have very good ideas. And certainly we don't align politically, but on certain things we definitely agree on, just common sense things. So I feel like, collective bargaining is one of those things where just don't just say no, just look into it and see how it looks. Because I think really at the end of the day, it's not the last best hope, but we're getting kind of close. So I feel like if we do go single payer, if things do fall apart and we don't really understand why they fell apart, I'd hate to do a post-mortem on the American healthcare system. That would be really sad.
Yeah, well, Dr. Gantwerker, we're reaching the close of this conversation, and it's hilarious. We try to keep this the length of a commute, and you're literally commuting. Um, but I have a big question, then a small question. And the big question is, I want to touch the third rail. You mentioned walking away from work as a bargaining tactic that physicians could never do because we have to take care of patients. A lot of medicine is elective. A lot of what's called healthcare these days isn't medicine anyway. So there are some things that we could walk away from and refuse to do without reform, without hurting people. Though I agree, the public perception would be a nightmare. So if we say that even if it would be safe, even if it would be ethically okay, we could never do that because it's politically a hot potato. What's left to us as a reasonable and actually effective bargaining tool when everyone else at the table knows that we aren't going to blink?
Well, I think it's like with any negotiation. Nowadays, you don't really negotiate the price of a car anymore. So you'll kind of go in, you buy a car, and then that's it. Back in the day, and I remember my father would torture us. We go to the car dealership, and we'd sit there for 5 or 6 hours. And he said to me, "Unless you're willing to walk away from the table, you have zero power."
Right.
So sometimes you have to get up and walk away. Now, we never leave a patient stranded, but if you can't come to a detente, like for a call contract, you're not going to walk out in the middle of your shift and leave somebody with cerebral, something horrible going on. You're going to take care of that patient, but once they're stable and your round comes out again, and they want you to be on call for $300, $200 a night, you're like, well, I'm breaking the call contract within the rights of the contract. So you have to follow the rules of the law, local, civil, and ethical guidances, and say, I'm not going to be taking call at your institution anymore. You have to find someone else. So you can do that without risking a patient, and no one's going to like pull up stakes and leave a patient, like that. I mean, there's situations where that does happen. It's very unfortunate, but I mean, you don't want to be that person, but you do have to be willing to walk away. And it's unfortunate if they want you to build, like, say they want you to build an epilepsy program or an AVM referral center, and they're not and they're being unreasonable. They're asking instead to be on call every other night or every 2 nights, and you're exhausted, your kids hate you, and your wife wants to leave you. That's not in the contract. You have to have the ability to sort of say, this was not what we talked about. Now, again, you don't want to jeopardize patient care, but you have to be willing to walk away, obviously in a way that minimizes and hopefully doesn't harm anybody in any kind of way other than maybe your job and your ability to pay your mortgage. But you have to be willing to walk away in a safe manner. And I know that a lot of people would say, well, that you're willing to walk away from a patient, aren't you? Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. You're talking about finishing up your responsibility as per the contract and as per moral and ethical standards, per our specialty and the hospital where you're working. And then when those are not met, you have to be willing to say, like, I'm not going to take it anymore. You got to be like Twisted Sister and say, we're not going to take it anymore. And in a way that you're going to say, per our contract, and I don't have anybody in the hospital, no one's in the ER waiting for me to see them. That's it. We're done. So that's what I think you have to think in mind, and you do have to do it in a careful way, like you said, the third rail. And obviously, people will sometimes intentionally misinterpret what I'm saying or what you're saying, and it's really too bad. You should really just think about what we're saying in a way that does make sense, that it is safe, and you can do that.
Well, that's fantastic. That's an excellent point. Question asked and answered. So, for the final word, Dr. Wayne loves to ask people what character they'd be in the Iliad. You've gone around and said, "What Star Wars character are you?" We've never had kaiju mentioned on the podcast before. So, I'd like to put it to both of you gentlemen. What kaiju do you think you'd be? And I'm going to tell you, obviously, I'm going King Kong all day. So, Dr. Wayne, how about you? And then Dr. Gantwerker, our guest, can finish.
What kind of kaiju?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a kaiju. I want to be like those big mech guys that come and fight the kaiju.
Okay.
Well, I guess, is that your final answer? I mean, come on, man.
Godzilla.
Well,
Yeah, obviously.
King Ghidorah's it comes to mind, but he's a little bit too much apocalyptic for me. So I probably would have to go. I probably have to go with the big guy himself, GZ, as because he's sort of an anti-hero. He's incredibly powerful, but at the end of the day, he does the right thing. He does make a bit of mess of things, but he tries really hard. And at the end of the day, what keeps him going is just this endless energy. You just can't keep a good kaiju down. And GZ is the OG. He's just powered by nuclear energy, and you can't. And he is forever lasting because he just won't give up.
So we've got the classic OG, limitless energy. We've got obviously Dr. Wang, the king of enabling tech, and the future of spine surgery goes with the next suit, and me, the dumb gorilla. Perfect. So fantastic, wonderful conversation, Dr. Gantwerker. We need to get you out of your car. Thank you for coming on the show again. Please drive safe. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure, gents. Always a pleasure.